Birthday. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janella Hinds, and I am a unionist and an educator. And so I'm going to speak from that perspective as educators in the room. And as you heard, I have some experience as someone who was a dean in the school where I taught and someone who focused on conflict resolution in my school. And so I wanted to start today's conversation in thinking about something that many of us in New York City have been speaking about, that we saw on social media recently. Anyone saw the fight in the McDonald's with the girls fighting, or a girl getting jumped by another group of students? That happened after those students left a school that I represent in central Brooklyn, not too far away from where I live. These are the students who attend the school where I teach, one period a day. These are the students who started, it appears, that conflict in the school building. And that happened on the street. And unfortunately, we're in a society right now where folks are quick to pull out a cell phone and start to video what's happening rather than interrupt the brutal attack on a fellow young person. And so they're coming back to school the next day, or not, but everybody in the school community knows what happened with those girls in that school. And we have them for, in my case, 51 minutes a day. And then the next group comes in, and the next group comes in, and the next group comes in. But our students are bringing with them their experiences from home, their experiences from the street, their stresses, their concerns, their growing brains and hearts. And at the same time, we, as educators and as trade unionists, are concerned about the safety in the school building. We have to be honest about that, right? We have to be honest about the fact that we want our schools to remain safe, not just for the students that we teach, also for us so that we can get home to the people that we love, right? And so this balance that we're thinking about how we strike that. How do we figure out how we enter as classroom educators, as paraprofessionals, guidance counselors, social workers, because some of us are not only content instructors, some of us are coming with other responsibilities to this work that we do with our students. And so what I'd like to talk about for a couple of minutes is how we as unionists can engage in this conversation. And so I'm going to propose three things in our activism. The first thing is that we work toward the creation of positive school environments. I'm going to break that down a little more for you. The second thing is that we seek and participate in learning opportunities that support individual and collective professional growth. All of my colleagues have already discussed the importance of that professional learning, but I'm going to give you some examples that we're doing through the UFT. And the third thing is the collective bargaining aspect of this. How do we negotiate contracts and enter into partnerships with state agencies, with the Department of Education in our local education area to ensure that our schools are secure and our students are safe? The first part is positive school communities. And it has been said, so I'm not going to go into too much depth, but our academic engagement with our students should be culturally responsive and socially relevant. We have got to engage with our students with respect for who they are. And sometimes they wear their hair a little differently than everybody else does. And sometimes they have very different experiences from ours. They may practice different religions. They may have different cultural experiences. They may speak different languages. But at the foundation, we need to figure out how to respect and regard who they are in their culture and with their social regard. And so I have learned that I need to amend my slide and change it to the word restorative practice. That we need to employ those kinds of strategy that move beyond punishment and discipline, taking advantage of opportunities, using teachable moments to figure out how we can grow as an entire school community, creating spaces for repair. The second piece is the learning opportunities. And we take very seriously the voices that we have as educators in demanding the professional learning that we need. Yes, we know the students that we teach. Sometimes we know what we need. Sometimes others are bringing information to us that we never considered. But our voices are critical to this process of deciding what are we teaching and how are we teaching that content. We should be engaged in that process. The United Federation of Teachers presents a 6-hour Dignity for All Students workshop. We have already trained 10,000 members and community folks who are becoming educators, and we're talking about microaggressions and implicit bias and how we prepare ourselves as educators in communication with each other, in communication with our students, in communication with the parents and community. And a quick point, some of the parents of the students that we teach may have been unsuccessful when they were in school. And so they may be carrying some baggage about what school is like and how scary the teachers are and the horror of going to the principal's office. And they're carrying all of that fear and shame with them and passing it down to their children. And so when we think about this kind of professional learning opportunity, part of it is giving them space to get more comfortable in communicating with us and giving us the space to learn how to more successfully communicate with and listen to them. The United Federation of Teachers has a positive learning collaborative, and this is a partnership with the Department of Education. It used to be called the Institute for Understanding Behavior. It has a new name. And in this program, teams from particular schools, it's similar to what Tala just described with the program that Morningside Center is doing. Teams from schools, and this team must include a principal, at least 4 school-based educators. This team engages in this training process where they develop skills to check their behavior. And I'll speak for me, I don't know about the other teachers in the room, but I know sometimes I get frustrated when my students aren't paying attention, and I know sometimes my fuse is a little shorter than it needs to be, and sometimes because I am not as patient as I could be, or I am not employing the most successful strategies, situations escalate in ways that they don't have to. And so this kind of professional learning gives school communities the opportunity to reframe how we're going to engage around student behavior. The last thing I want to talk about is collective bargaining that supports safe school communities. And this is what happens in New York City. Not only do we have a monthly consultation committee where members of the union have the right to sit down with the principal and to raise concerns with the principal about what's happening in the school, we also have safety committees. The chapter leader of the building sits on the safety committee with the school safety agents, because in our schools we do have school safety agents, with parents, with NYPD, to talk about how to keep the school safe and secure, to raise issues about the safe corridor around the school building, or about the number of infractions that are increasing, or about practices that we want to try in order to keep our schools safe. I would encourage those of you who don't have this in your contracts to start to think about, as you're moving toward another contract negotiation, how you could employ a safety committee. We also have in our latest contract a professional development committee. So the union has the right to identify people from the chapter who are going to sit on a professional development committee with administrators in the school and talk about where our needs are as educators. Parent engagement is also another important part of our latest contract. We have time dedicated in the school week for parent engagement. It's a challenge as a high school educator. I can't lie, it's difficult because unfortunately, as our students get older, parents give them more freedom. They're not engaging with the schools as much as they do with younger students. And so we have to be more creative. Is it about a website? Is it about a school newsletter that we're sending out to those parents? Is it about reaching out in ways that we haven't reached out in the past? And we're using that parent engagement time to figure that out. We also have a BRAVE initiative. BRAVE is our anti-bullying initiative. We have a hotline where students of New York City schools can call in and talk about some of the concerns that they're facing. We're able to give those students support. The last thing I want to talk about before we turn it over to the Q&A is another partnership which brings us a great deal of pride, and that's our community learning schools initiative. We have 15 schools in New York City. It's a UFT, it's a Department of Education, but it's also private industry. Because a lot of times we don't think about how we could partner with nonprofits or with corporations or with institutes of higher learning, right? We don't really connect in the ways that we could connect. And so the community learning schools is a partnership with local hospitals. We also get support from the Laxatica Vision Group. We're getting support from the food bank. So we have all of these groups that are coming together and working in communities to provide wraparound services, because we know that when our students are unable to see, or our students are coming to school hungry, or there are mental health issues that aren't being addressed, that those barriers create issues in the classroom and throughout the school community. And so I'm encouraging you all to think creatively about how we can work as unionists to engage in this work. On the handouts, we have contact information. You could always feel free to send an email. We'd be happy to share what we're doing in New York City with any of you who are in other places. And I look forward to our question and answer period.